If you were a kid growing up in the early 1980s and liked video games, then like me, I am sure every trip into an arcade was like some kind of magical journey. Just having a browse to see what great games were available to play, it really was a great time to be into video games. In those days, as the technology got better and better, game developers were pushing the envelope of what was possible, and you could really see huge leaps forward in visual quality. Sega had been having some success recently with their sprite scaler technology in games like Hang On and Space Harrier, and their next offering was no different. Sega developer Yu Suzuki had two ideas for a motorcycle racing game, one which was based around the 500 GP style, and another which was based on dirt track racing. Sega bosses encouraged him to develop the game based on GP, and after the success of Hang On, Yu Suzuki was allowed to go with his other idea involving dirt bikes, and this is how Enduro Racer came to be. Enduro Racer is a motorcycle racing game based on the sport of enduro. The player rides a dirt bike through 7 stages which have elevation changes and turns, and must avoid other riders as well as logs and boulders. Controls for the game are based on a motorcycle's handlebars, with a throttle and brake control. Players can pull up on the handlebars on the cabinet to perform a wheelie. Jumping over logs is also possible, but players have to land with the wheelie technique or risk crashing. The race ends when the player runs out of time, which happens to me a lot as I keep crashing and this wastes a lot of time, or when you complete the course, which I very seldom do, as I am rubbish at this game. The arcade cabinet came in 2 variants. The more common one to find in arcades was the upright cabinet with the moto cross handlebars, and the other was a sit-on cabinet that resembled a dirt bike, which took up more room, and this is why it was hard to find in arcades. The visuals were great, but also unremarkable at the same time. Some of the colouring was a little bland, I thought, but the way the sprites zoomed right up into you was impressive, especially as this was done at a real frantic pace. In most racing games of the time, there really wasn't much to animate, but the other riders and cars all looked pretty decent, but the backgrounds are really just there, and they're nothing fancy at all. The soundtrack is nothing spectacular either, but it doesn't sound terrible. It's just there to provide some background. The motorbike sounds are pretty horrible in my opinion. This loud, high-pitched wailing sound. It gets pretty annoying, and I do not recommend playing this game with headphones on, but the motorbike explosions are great. I remember playing this game in the arcades at some seaside town resort when I was about 9 years old. It was the full-on dirt bike version, and I had to get my dad to lift me up onto the bike so I could have a go. Being only 9 years old, my arms were so small and feeble, I couldn't really pull back to do a wheelie, and I kept sliding off when I leaned into a turn. But nonetheless, I found it great fun to play, and I had trouble removing my smile every time I hit a jump. But apart from that, there wasn't a whole lot to it. The experience of playing the game was better than the game itself, but as a kid, it's all about that playing experience, I suppose. And I did look forward to having a port of this game to play at home, and boy, was that a big letdown. The first home port I got was on a Commodore 64, and man, This game was really bad on that machine. The visuals are a joke, really. Firstly, the bike riders look like they're on mopeds and not dirt bikes, and everything moves at this really slow, lethargic pace. The obstacles look like, well, they look like turds, frankly. Especially the one that goes the whole length of the racetrack. It's like Bigfoot has pinched a loaf or something. The sound is rubbish. Although the SID chip does try really hard to produce a good tune, but the playability is just not there. It's too slow, unresponsive and uninteresting. And for some reason that I couldn't figure out here, when I was playing this on my Mr. FPGA, the game would crash after a single play. I do not remember that happening when I was a kid playing it at the time it was out, but then I did only play this game once or twice, as I was so disappointed in this game. Thankfully, the pain didn't last long, as I did get a pretty decent version of this game to play sometime later. Straight away you are thinking, hang on, this isn't Enduro Racer. And I guess it's Enduro Racer in name only. It certainly doesn't look like the arcade version, but in all honesty, this version I think is more enjoyable than the arcade. You see, once you strip away the fancy controls of the arcade, the game is pretty basic. In fact, much like a lot of Sega's sprite scalers of the day, Hang On, Afterburner, Space Harrier, these were all great looking games, but really, they were all pretty boring to play. Enduro Racer on the Master System changes things up slightly. As you race, you earn points for each vehicle you pass, and these points can be redeemed between levels to perform repairs or upgrade your bike, which actually gives you an incentive to play on. The gameplay is then pretty much the same as the arcade, but the isometric viewpoint makes dodging other vehicles a whole lot easier. And when you consider this game was around £10 at the time, which was only £2 more than the terrible Commodore 64 version, it seemed like a real bargain. The visuals are fine. You can clearly see where the track is and where it isn't, where the other vehicles are, the obstacles and all that other stuff. The sound is just typical Master System fare, I'm afraid. Pretty average all round, but the gameplay more than makes up for that. The game is pretty simple, and after a few goes you can memorise the lines to take and then try and max out your score, or beat your mate's score if that's your thing. Yet, given all the simplicity of it, I still find this game enjoyable to play and always have done. It's a bit of a hidden gem in my opinion. And that was my look back at Enduro Racer. If you like this video, then please do give me a sub and a thumbs up, or even a comment or two below. That's all from me folks. Thanks for watching.